a couple of our candidates. You have met Chris Foster and Eric Saddle, and also Dan Almoney. And we are also being joined by Chris Woodward, who was the first person elected as a Forwardist in last year's election.
That's right.
So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about running as a Forwardist, either endorsed or for a Democrat or just a plain old Forwardist. First question, some of you might have answered this in your speeches, but why did you personally run for office as a Forwardist?
So for me, as mentioned in the speech, I'm not satisfied with the status quo. I don't think any of us are. But I think Forward is taking a very unique approach to solving so many challenges we face in politics. How many other movements are talking about recruiting people of character? Not saying that I just have so much character, but what I'm saying is people are drawn to that. People, and you don't have to sell them much on it. People know when they're working with authentic people. And really everything about Forward for me has felt authentic so far. So that's my answer.
So that question comes up, the answer is, well, they asked me, so I thought it was a good idea. But more seriously, as I just reflected on it, the Republican Party, where I spent most of my career, has really moved in a direction where I couldn't go. And the Democratic Party was not interested in someone with my candidate profile. So for me, it was that opportunity I never thought would happen. And when the opportunity presented itself, I thought this was an opportunity. This was a good group of people to work with. And I told Matt, who may have left, yes, I have pretty much dedicated my life to him for the next 6 months, so hopefully we'll get the support we need.
My situation is a little different, but having run for office in 2022, you sort of pull the cover off of the illusion of how politics works, and you realize that it's not about solutions as much as you want it to be, especially in the two major parties. It's a lot about power and money and influence. And they don't really care about if your neighborhood gets better or how much tax money goes into your schools, and that's a problem. So, again, following Andrew's performance in 2020, he was my candidate of choice until the establishment sort of pushed him out. And I see that even at a Pennsylvania and a local level. And, so that's one of the reasons for seeking the endorsement.
So I ran because Kyle DiMarina called me and said, would you run for this open spot in your township? And I said, great, we'll have to talk about it. He said, well, you need to have the signatures in a week. And I said, how many signatures? And he said, 12. 12. He said, get 25 just in case. So that was fairly easy to do. I was raised a Roosevelt Democrat, excuse me. The two big influences in my life in terms of politics, my great uncle Lawrence was the road commissioner in a township actually a county in southern tier of New York. And we were talking about politics. His was an elected position, and I believe he was a Republican. And I said, well, the whole area is Democrat. Why are you a Republican? He said, we have to have two parties in this country. And I thought, okay, well, that makes sense. And then in an election in 1968, my father decided that it was important to support a third-party candidate. some of you may know who that third-party candidate was. I'll let you figure that out. His choice was not great, but it indicated to me that there had to be more than just two choices for elections. In the summer of 22, I heard that Christy Todd Whitman and Joe Sisnak, a Republican and a Democrat, were getting together to form a new party, and I was in 100% when I saw that. And that hasn't changed. And that's the reason why when Kyle called me, I said yes. What was in my head was no. But I had to kind of put my action where my thoughts had been. And I knew this was important. I have to tell you, the position I have is auditor of Lower Hyberg Township in Berks County. When we talk about down ballot, it is all the way down the ballot. It's the downest spot you can run for. And that's really interesting because here we are starting all the way to the ground roots, and I'm very happy I can do that. It's a fairly simple, straightforward job. Myself and two other auditors approved the salaries of the township supervisors. It's probably not a good idea to allow them to approve their own salaries. But it is public service. I would point out, if you have the opportunity, there's a documentary about Stuart Udall called The Politics of Beauty. And when I was growing up, there were three men that my mom adored and loved: the Pope, John F. Kennedy, and Stuart Udall. And just as a indication of how he was as Secretary of the Interior under Kennedy and then Johnson, he got a whole bunch of national parks passed through Congress, and one of them, he got 100 senators to vote yes. Never been done before. But the man was really a force for public service, and I think that's that.
There are two other examples that we could use for our ranked choice voting demonstrations. It's, living in PA 10, which is Scott Perry's district, there were six Democratic candidates on the ballot, and in my race for state house, there were 5 Republicans running. And I can tell you, I think it would have been interesting to see how those results would have been different, if they would have been different, and how they would have shaken out in those races had ranked choice voting been implemented at that time. So, but again, from a state house legislation, we can certainly introduce that legislation to move those things forward.
I should mention that when I ran, I was unopposed, and had I lost, in other words, gotten 0 votes, then I had to vote for myself, or I didn't vote at all. The other thing, I apologize for not wearing a coat with these gentlemen, but I'm not running for office.
Right. You're elected.
I don't have to raise my.
I want to wear that
Next year.
in December.
Okay. That sounds good. What I can do is I can continue to talk to people I know, family, friends, colleagues, people in the neighborhood about what Forward stands for. And hearing what Craig Snyder talked about today, that's very helpful. I can get those points across. And also doing what I can to help these 3 fellows get elected. So getting out there and getting some signatures, as much as I do not want to do it.
Just nobody wants to do it, man. Trust me.
This is what I need to do to support this movement, because I believe that this is critically important, not so much for myself, but certainly for my children and their children. I mean, this country's a mess. And I've been around a little while. I remember the Kennedy administration, and I can't remember it being like that. Back in those days, they fight in the Senate during the day, and they all go out to dinner at night. It's not like that now. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of revolting, if you ask me.
What would you say to people who are thinking about running as a Forwardist?
All aboard, we're going places. Yeah, I think just someone who was thinking about it, maybe kind of on the edge about doing it, I would tell them that this has been a breath of fresh air for me just in the few months that I've been formally a part of it. And it's nice to think about politics and then also have that conversation go in a direction that's a little more hopeful. That as foreign as that feels sometimes, certainly doesn't feel that way when I'm talking about Forward.
Save me, please. No, it's funny. It actually, I sort of agree with Chris on this. It's so, look, it's so energizing to talk to people out there about what we're doing, and so many people are really enthusiastic, say thank you so much for doing this, thank you for, what you're trying to do. And what I would say to them is, look, it can be a little lonely. In other words, it can be a little lonely that, we have, some support. Obviously, I love all the support that this party has given us, but, it's hard to be a candidate that doesn't have, a huge team behind them. But I think the answer is that this is really meaningful. We are on the cutting edge of what is next. It will take a while, but each of us will be part of that effort to get to where we need to go.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I don't think that I've fully formulated a response to that. But
Just been a few minutes.
has it been an hour?
Has it been an hour yet?
Well,
It'll sink in after a while.
It's fine. But I would say, it's about my political experience, although rather small, has been about meeting people where they are and talking and educating and trying to figure out what we have in common, where we meet, where we align. And that's kind of the goal of everything. I can walk up to somebody's door, I look for certain things, is there a bumper sticker that I can, is there a Go Birds bumper sticker for an Eagles fan, or am I talking to a Steelers fan? Are there kids' toys? Or do I hear dogs barking announcing my arrival? And when you get to the door and you get into having those conversations, you just say, I'm a Democrat, but I'm not a California Democrat. Like, I grew up here in my home is in York County, I live in York County, I grew up here. I'm from the same, part of the country and have the same sort of values. And it's, from a third party Forwardist viewpoint, it's like you walk in, there's 26,000 flavors of toothpaste. Why do we only have 2 political parties that are viable options for us? So, in the spirit of America, it seems like more choices offer us better results.
So I'm really grateful to Chris and Eric for taking on this difficult task, and I've never really run for office. What did we spend? $25 for my sign for the front. I mean, that's what I did, and I got some signatures. And I know the amount of effort you need to put into it, and the chance that you may lose because you're taking a chance on something completely new. That impresses the hell out of me. So thank you very much. And for Dan to be willing to say, I'm a Democrat, but I'm a Forwardist. I don't necessarily have to go along with my party. I have to do what's right for my community. That just blows my mind. And it reminds me of, I'm going to forget her name, former Vice President's daughter, who was Congresswoman in Wyoming.
Liz Cheney.
Liz Cheney. What she did, God, we need her in this party. I'm sure there's many things I would disagree with, with her, but
The courage.
she had the courage to do what was right. I mean, that impresses me more than anything else that anybody could do, because, as far as I'm concerned, many of the politicians in Washington and Harrisburg have no freaking backbone. They're doing what they're part. And I think to myself, I've been a contrarian all my life. Somebody would say, you have to do this and that, and I'd probably use a word that maybe I shouldn't use. But then I understand that my office would be in a closet somewhere. So I'm just blown away by people that are willing to take this chance and stand up to a machine that's run for many years, and it's all about one party or the other getting elected. That's it.
Thanks, Chris, I appreciate that. The other thing that's come to me too is you realize when you do this, the people who will help you that you never expected would help you. And it's incredibly gratifying. And people send me money. I've had people, willing to do, signature parties, go out there with me. It's great. But the flip side is people who you thought would help who aren't. And that's, one of the realities of any endeavor where you put yourself kind of out there, is there are people who are going to step up, and they're the people you least think. And sometimes there's people in your life who you think you can count on and you can't. And that reality, it's hard. It's hard to remind yourself of that moment of sort of the flaws in some of the people that you love that are part of your life. Not my wife, who's here, who's had a wonderful day with me, and I really didn't thank her in my speech, but I am incredibly grateful. I couldn't do this without her support, and so thank you, Robin.
Chris and Eric, I want you to know that if nobody's told you, you definitely each have my vote. Dan, I'm in a totally different voting district. Can I sneak in and vote for you? Is there a way to do that?
I don't think our current representative would appreciate that.
That might be a scandal or illegal.
Yeah.
It's frowned upon.
Frowned upon.
One last question. What would you say to encourage other people to run as a Forwardist?
I'd say if you've spent any amount of time thinking about it, longer than a minute, to seriously think about going for it. A few days after I had committed to running as a Forwardist, I actually 3 days in a row woke up with a sinking feeling in my stomach. But it wouldn't have mattered what the party was. What I'm trying to say is it's putting yourself out there. It's been a long time since I personally have done that. So the fear is real, but it certainly is empowering to not be doom scrolling, to be out doing something. It's not everything, but it is something.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us who are in the center of politics, this is the way to be involved in 2024 and beyond. And I think that when you look at the two existing parties and you see the polarization and you see where you have to be part of them, you go, I can be who I want to be here. And it's interesting that people ask the question, Craig raised it, like, what's your platform? And I said, well, actually, we don't really have a platform. It's what do I think about issues? And so it gives me the freedom, and I think other candidates have the freedom to answer questions in a way they feel is appropriate, and know that, the hope is that that answer is somewhere where most Americans, most Pennsylvanians feel, and we kind of move forward that way.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it was Craig who said it earlier. It's really about hope, and it's about a vision that's not based in fear or hatred of your neighbor or some crazy scheme to, I mean, the politics should be boring. I've spent a lot of time at school board meetings lately, and even those nowadays are becoming more interesting than they should be. Yeah, it's do the job of the people, make sure we get the roads paved, make sure that our emergency services are funded so that they're there when we need them. It's that kind of stuff, and that's why I think there's some of the disillusionment with the younger generation, because they're not seeing the results of what should be happening when we're just yelling back and forth at each other. So I think it's about setting the vision and hope and getting the job done more than being stuck in our little corner of the world.
I would certainly encourage someone to run for a local office. I give them my experience. Mine was fairly straightforward. But I want to just briefly mention the local school district race in our area. When I received a handout from the legislative candidates, it appeared they were really concerned about female students being molested. That was their concern. And I knew what they were talking about. But they didn't come out and say, we want to keep our girls safe in the locker room. So I wrote to them and I said, if the young women in our schools, in our high schools, are being molested, that's not your business. That's a criminal problem. Why isn't it a criminal? Why isn't this being, oh, no, it's not that, it's blah, blah, blah. And what it was about transgender women being in the locker room. And I asked a couple high school girls, and they said, it's not really an issue. My suspicion is that transgender female would be abused far more than she would people in the locker room. But that was the issue they were writing on. It was strictly fear. And if some of you will remember 20 years ago, parents were scared to death that a gay man was going to teach their children. Now it's not even an issue. So this whole business about fear, as we talked about earlier, that would be another reason why I would suggest somebody run the Forward Party. And as you said, it's all about hope.
I would like to thank all of you for participating in this panel, and I hope to see you guys all elected in November.